Well, thank you, Dean. Thanks for the comments. And certainly, I mean, one of the big things that we're looking at is we have had some, great advances the last couple of years. In this past year, we also had a few setbacks in terms of certainly with Manitowoc Company, Foster Deal, and then even to our west here, Brilliant Ironworks closure. But I guess the good news out of that is that it was a significant setback in terms of our community. I think we are going to have ripple effects. We will see some of that starting to come out that Dean will talk about with the LEAP survey. But in terms of unemployment, we saw a little bit of a blip in February, but we've really seen a recovery in March, even with more added to our area. And talking to our local companies, we still have many companies that are still actually on the opposite side, really looking for workers, and we're trying to really look at how do we engage our high schools, how do we engage keeping our students in this area, and really be aware of the opportunities that we have. And then what Dean mentioned is we do have a small staff, but they've accomplished a lot. And so really want to thank Lorinda, Eskers, and Derek. We have Koo that's also doing an internship, wasn't with us this morning, but between the annual reports that you have on your tables, please take a look on there. That's a significant amount of work that we put in. We're very proud of that work in there, and also just putting together events like this, let alone the day-to-day work that we have. So thank you again to my staff. But as Dean introduced, really we look at 2017 as collaboration. It is that, making sure, I guess, kind of the pluribus unum, united we stand, divided we fall. The more that we can work jointly together as a community, I think is what makes us strong, and how we can have a regional partnerships, I think is intricate. Progress Lakeshore, some of the key things that we've done this year is really starting on working very closely, much more so with Sheboygan County. There's been, I think, a history of more of kind of like an inter-school competition. As we've seen some of these layoffs, it's only a geopolitical boundary in terms of workforce and for employers. We're already having a lot of our workforce that is in this area, crosses over, so we've tried to do a lot more partnerships, and I could touch on that. And so one of the key things is with workforce. So as we've, what we had already was to work on recruiting workers as we got into the Foster Needle and the Manitowoc Crane impacts this year, was really working with a great partnership between, we worked very closely with the city within hours of the announcement, Bay Area workforce in the regional area, but then also Sheboygan and other counties in this area. We worked also to support the local companies because we saw that layoff was not only going to impact the workers, but over 120 manufacturing companies really are in support of the Manitowoc Company. And so try to understand what that impact is going to be and the best way to support them. We've kicked off some initiatives with exporting and government contracting. But as well as when we talked about Michigan High School and others, is really retaining the students in our community. One of the biggest challenges that the state of Wisconsin has, but then more specifically Manitowoc County, is that 2 out of 3 students when they graduate high school are leaving our area. So that is, as we look at, since our area is aging, we're at about an average age right now of about 47 in Manitowoc County, we really need to retain those folks that are coming out of schools, and that partnership with LTC, the partnership with local schools, and really showing that opportunity, and with UW Manitowoc is really significant in making sure that we can have those students understand the opportunities here and start doing, training and working in those companies now. And a big, 2 other big components is entrepreneurship. As we talk about, one of the biggest things most people look at economic development is replacing that company. So if a Manitowoc company does leave, how do we replace them? It is actually, Manitowoc Company, Miro, Thermo Fisher all started in a garage somewhere, here, whether it was 100 years ago, and we're trying to work on that next company. So I will be touching on a few of those that we are, really want to celebrate that are doing it. But we look at, if we're working on an average of about entrepreneurs right now, about 20 of those companies will really move forward. But we need to go through and really support and help grow all those opportunities to see which ones will really be the next success. And then advocating. So a big thing that we looked at, if I get back to what Dean talked about, why is Progress Lakeshore here? When I talked to our founders, it was always somebody was looking for, somebody needs to step up and do this. And, so I think that Progress Lakeshore, we really look at being that somebody, and when there is challenges that are facing our area, to be able to stand up and say, hey, this is what we support. So one of the key things is when I talk about workforce is Manitowoc and Sheboygan. We are meeting monthly with the Manitowoc Job Center, with the Manitowoc Sheboygan Economic Development Corp, with the chamber down there, and also, I can list through a number of these, but basically a regional workforce to really look at that it is between Sheboygan and Manitowoc. It is really one workforce group now, and so when we had the Manitowoc layoff. Kohler Company was looking for 450. They could have nearly almost taken all of those workers, in one swoop just to Kohler. But we had, some job fairs that involved, up to 84 companies. And the key part of that is a rapid response, making sure those workers know here's the training available through the local technical college. Here is the opportunities for, unemployment benefits to get you through there. Most of them didn't even need the unemployment benefits, that they went right through and was able to find other companies with some training additional needed. So we've done joint county job fairs. Again, it's not just Manitowoc County. We've been hosting in the spring in Sheboygan, in the fall in Manitowoc, and this summer we hosted a special one here, at the Manitowoc County Fairgrounds. And similar with our workforce training programs, it overlaps not only Manitowoc but into Sheboygan, but it's really, again, our partnership with LTC, again, is significant in making sure that these trained workers get what they need in training, and also grants that can help support that. Speaking of Michigan, and one thing that we'd like to expand to even additional schools is a business education partnership. Tom and Colleen Tim have been significant on that, is being able to have where they started an academic career planning program that in 6th grade, the students start to look at what is it that they want to do, helping them really narrow that through junior high, and by the time they're in high school, to take classes at basically LTC, many of them right at the technical college, and then be able to spend their split days by the time they're junior and senior year. They might be leaving high school with 20 to 36 credits and already have a good idea of what career that they want to do. And 3 advisory councils that have been set up in Michigan that some companies in the room are already sitting on is a manufacturing advisory council, healthcare, and agriculture, but they're able to help provide input to this high school as to what classes they should be training the students on. Soft skills is something that's really coming up that we're hearing a lot on, that it's like not only should they have those technical skills, but just having that interviewing, having that resume skills. And so a lot of these companies that are partnering, we're doing mock interviews with the students and really making sure that they're prepared to go into the workforce. But also connecting the students to career opportunities in Manitowoc County, because Michigan has recognized the community of 1,400. If they don't grow and if they don't keep their students, they won't be there as a school. So they have really focused on that. So we do want to look at how do we bring that to Manitowoc, Two Rivers, and the surrounding schools. When I talk about entrepreneurship and working with that, we have a number of companies that we're always working with, but some of them, have really moved ahead. And one of them, since I started back in 2014, that really took advantage of, 3 programs that we had, introducing to the business plan, introducing to financing, and then being able to go and go through an actual business plan training program, and then work with our local RLF in Two Rivers was E&D Woodcrafters. So I think Dale is here today, and I guess, say stand up, Dale, but Dale is one that we took the, Dale has put in a significant amount of work that really took the garage business, literally his garage behind his house, took that, took a situation where he was, had some talent, laid off from a company, that he had some extreme talent in woodworking, started doing work, really kept expanding the business, filled the garage, and finally as we worked with him and spent a significant period of time looking for the right fit, was able to match up with Two Rivers, find that we could get some assistance in getting a building, and really now has his own building and business, in Two Rivers. Another one that really on a kind of, I guess I'd say a very steep plane and a very quick, when they first came to me, I stepped back and really looked at it and said, hey, are we, can we take the right steps as R2H? So Jeff and Julie Rosum, they specialize in manufacture and sale of basically all natural, savory cooked flavors, condensed natural smoke and grill flavors. And as you anticipate, they came from a local company that's similar. But they, 2 scientists that really took that idea and now have around the point that they're opening. So if Jeff and Julie are here today, stand up. And if you really want to understand that they took a situation where we had a company change here, from Red Arrow to Cary, and they were able to go out on their own, take the ideas that they had and a market opportunity, and really, and with working with the city of Manitowoc, RLF were able to help, with I and Nick and others, and then also with MPU was able to assist with a revolving loan fund to match, the $4.5 million that they put into that business. So it's truly a local success story that, as we've had others go away, we look at the phoenix that rise from that. Two other smaller ones that are in the area, but still, continue to grow as well is French Creek Bakery. Karen Linsmeyer really specializes in cakes, was really working out of her basement, went through our business plan training program, and now has went from one side to another side in French Creek, and really has a great operation there if you've ever been there. So I think Karen might be here this morning. Cakes for a wedding or any ceremony there. Just has a great business. It continues to revise, and anytime that we can have some support on there. And then one other one is the Scissortail Bakery and Kitchen. Helena Stallings is really taking where she's looking at the craving for organic and all natural, taking that and really making bones and making broth and be able to sell that organic online and locally. I think Helena might be here this morning, but not sure. But if not, at least, those are just true dedication, it's true organic, and it's believing in that, what you can do, and some great products out there. So just, that's a sampling of the 70+ companies that we're working with right now. But also local company support, to touch base on that, with support of Lead Research, soon after the Manitowoc layoff, and we reached out and did a survey out to the companies that were really impacted. We were able to get a grant from U.S. Bank, so I would like to recognize U.S. Bank today, too, if we have some folks from U.S. Bank, is that they were they provided a $25,000 grant to be able to reach out and support the Manitowoc company closure, and that's when we do look at that coming together at the right time. That's very beneficial to be able to have that assistance. Part of that grant, we're able to bring in Wisconsin Procurement Institute. I think we might have Wisconsin Procurement Institute here today too. We had a session in a couple months back, and we were able to have 47 local companies come in, be able to train them, and be able to show that opportunity. We're going to do some follow-up, is really as to how to connect to government opportunities and really diversify away from just that, significant dependence on Manitowoc company, as well as export assistance. So recently, a group of what we call Northeast Wisconsin Regional Economic developers, as well as small business development, UW Oshkosh and Wisconsin Economic Development, hired an export advisor, Greg Miller. So if there is any companies that we can come one-on-one and kind of walk through what is the steps that's needed to be able to export, it is generally about a 1.5 or 2 year project in order to really take it from an idea to export, but it can have some significant benefit and diversification for your company. So I would say please reach out if there's something that we can help your company with on that. Finally, just to kind of go through here, advocacy, a couple big things is tax incremental financing. It's one of the biggest tools that we have in economic development. Competing against other states, there's ones out there that have much better incentives, that out there that can offer a company. So what we do have here is being able to, with Nick and Greg here today, and certainly Dennis, those are the keys in our local municipalities that we can use, and certainly even Bob Ziegelbauer is recognizing that now too. That tax incremental financing is something that can really benefit a company. There's a local company that we have that had a choice between us and Minnesota, and really came down to be able to help them with that, is going to be able to help that company grow. But as well as federal, the support of the National Marine Sanctuary, and recently Environmental Protection Agency looked at designating Manitowoc County as non-attainment for ozone. We had a presentation on that on Monday. That is something that we will see something happen in June, but right after this session, I'm going down to Milwaukee and really helping work on the lobbying side. So we do have Senator Johnson's office here today, and we have Mary Ann Lippert from the state here today too, so I do want to recognize them for thank you very much for attending, and for that advocacy side for Manitowoc County and the Lakeshore to really help push back against what could be some impactful from the EPA. So again, if there is certain things that you see in your businesses on the regulatory side or something that you need, please come to us so we can help, help bring that attention. And finally, I want to thank all of our investors, because for us to be here, certainly it's a private-public partnership. Our biggest partners have been certainly the City of Manitowoc, City of Two Rivers, and Kiel. So, certainly want to honor all those. But U.S. Bank that did a $25,000 grant for us this year. Our longtime support, any between Community First, Investors Bank, Bank First National, Holy Family, Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin Aluminum Foundry, and I won't name them all, but I would say please recognize these companies if I can get a round of applause. And thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Jess Sasche. Jess Sasche is the president of Rawley Point Advisors. Jeff has been an economist for DWD for a number of years. Whenever I was doing a grant or doing a project or really need research, Jess Sasche was the person that I've gone to for 7 years. He's really had deep understanding not only of this area but from the state and really looking at that federal level. And when I look at our breakfast, I want to make sure we're sharing some of the stuff that's going on, not only in Manitowoc County, but from across the area, and what you could see as a business coming up, and what are some things that we should really look forward to in 2017. So I'd like to hand this over to Jeff.
Oh, well, it's good to be back up in front of an audience. So, those of you who probably know me, most of you know me from having a state of Wisconsin name tag on. I left the Department of Workforce Development at the end of February, and am an active job seeker, so if anyone wants to hire me, set business cards. In any event, the one nice thing about not being a state employee is this presentation did not have to be vetted by my communications office. So consequently, yeah, again. So it's a pleasure to be here. One of the things that I think some of you may know about me is I am a Two Rivers native, and the last name is pronounced Soxy Peter.
My fault.
Born on the north side of Two Rivers, was a graduate of Washington High School, which is an institution that lives very strongly in the nostalgia of the people who attended and graduated from there. And I was also an altar boy at Sacred Heart Catholic Church, where every Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, I stood at an altar that's right about where the drive-through for the Walgreens pharmacy was at the time. So as a consequence of my 40 years of experience in the Lakeshore, I've seen, noticed a lot of transitions. And my father, who was a 42-year employee of Thermo Fisher Scientific Hamilton's Industries, has also witnessed a lot of those same transitions. So as a consequence, as we look at what's happening on the Lakeshore, what's happening in Manitowoc County, what will be happening moving forward, a lot of what we know about the county remains true, but a lot of the things that are happening around the county that may have some bearing on it are things that we've never had to deal with before. So one of the challenges Peter put in front of me is he gave me 15 minutes and he told me, well, start at the international level and then try and cover everything that might have some bearing on Manitowoc County. Well, we marked the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and I don't have that much time. On Saturday, rather. So a couple of kind of the key points. Obviously, one of the things that a lot of analysts in the market are watching very closely is what's going on in Europe right now. Europe, of course, being a major export market for a lot of Wisconsin companies. We know that a couple of months ago, the British Parliament triggered Chapter 50 of the EU Constitution, which signals the beginning of Brexit. Theresa May, the Prime Minister, called for parliamentary elections in June in an attempt to gain a stronger mandate on those negotiations. It'll be really interesting to see what happens, of course, because there are some hardliners, especially some of the Scandinavian countries, as well as smaller countries between countries like Belgium and Luxembourg that are taking a harder line in negotiations. So what may happen is, a very messy divorce where the United Kingdom, which is a strong American trading partner, might have facing some rough seas ahead. Similarly, this Saturday, voters in France will go to the polls in their presidential election. Again, it is an election that is very strongly reflective of the populist movement, which is moving through a lot of Western European countries. We saw some similar effects in our own election in November. So as a consequence, one of the real prevailing undertones of a lot of sentiment regarding export markets, as well as a lot of trading activity, is this question of, does any nation have either a favorable position or an overwhelming position in the marketplace where they can functionally exist within an international market on their own? So as a consequence, again, what we've heard very strongly from the Trump administration over the course of the last 3 months are signals to scale back American participation in some of the multilateral trading agreements. Although there have been some mixed messages in that line. So the U.S. is one of the first actions of the new administration, withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There were some mixed signals which the markets did not take terribly kindly to last week regarding the potential exit of NAFTA, which has now been signaled as a renegotiation. But what we're seeing now is really more of a prevalent position where the United States, the United Kingdom, as well as a number of nations, are really reverting to a lot of the trading behavior and the international negotiation position which dominated the 1990s, which is essentially that of bilateral trade agreements. And so consequently, so we started hearing drumbeats again in February regarding milk prices and milk trade for ultra-pasteurized milk products. Of course, that was something that affected a lot of farmers here very closely, or very prominently. There were also growing concerns over softwood exports from Canada, which again impact a lot of our pulp and paper mills as well as our construction industries. So we've seen shots fired across the border. Sault Ste. Marie is undamaged. But we're going to continue to see a lot of, again, some of the rumblings which we were used to during the Bush and the early years of the Clinton administration, going to war with this country or this country over this product or this product. And what that creates is a lot of uncertainty in the market because, again, we don't know, there's a potential for very different trading environments depending on what market you're operating in. Within domestic policy, again, I don't have enough time to go through all of the critical issues. We know that healthcare is, again, on the House's radar. Whip counts as of this morning seem to indicate that the bill, if it comes to a vote this week, will probably be defeated. But there are still ongoing negotiations. Again, it's a very fluid situation. There's been a lot of press, of course, over movements in a number of areas related to immigration reform. Calls, or bipartisan calls for infrastructure reform and infrastructure funding, and similarly, trade issues. All of those things, again, are on the table with very little certainty as to how any of those are going to resolve themselves over the course of the remainder of at least the current legislative session. And then we also have the specter of broad-scale tax reform sitting on top of all of that. Suffice it to say that Senator Johnson and every member of Congress is very busy this time of year. The other thing that's happening today is the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee is meeting. All indications is that they are not planning on raising the federal funds rate today, but are signaling another increase in June, keeping consistent with their schedule for 3 planned interest rate increases over the course of 2017. One of the critical issues involved in the Fed's actions are growing concerns over possible inflationary pressures. The US dollar has a very strong position in international markets right now, which does impact export potential. And so consequently, there have been calls from some in the administration to potentially put some brakes on inflationary growth and affect that position slightly. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on, again, who you ask and what time of day you ask them. So one of the things that we've been looking at very closely, and the way that I structured this presentation is I'll talk about some issues and I'll show you a chart that may have nothing to do with those issues. But this goes back to a point, and I'll have to clarify, or I'll have to, there's going to be a learning point in this presentation for Peter. And I hate to single him out, but he's been citing a statistic that I just have to correct in a number of venues. But what this chart illustrates is what's referred to as the employment population ratio. It's basically the percentage of everyone over the age of 16 that's actively employed in the marketplace. And this is national data. So as you can see, the EPOP ratio, as we call it, peaked in 1998, and it took a huge dip during the recession in 2008, 2009, and it's been slowly rebounding. Now, one of the things that has happened since 2008, however, is that at present, at least nationally, there are about 29 million workers between the ages, or males specifically, between the ages of 25 and 54 that are not participating in the labor market. And they've dropped out of the labor market for a number of reasons. One of the more intriguing theories that has been posited, especially about the 20-something set, is that they've dropped out of the marketplace to become YouTube superstars and video game champions. I'm not sure how many of, how many of my current college students have that ambition. But it is pointing to a more troubling trend, which is essentially that of a marketplace where there's almost infinite opportunity, but a lack of motivation within that same marketplace, either because of geographic mobility, levels of compensation, understandings of work arrangements, to engage those individuals to come back out and be what we consider, I guess, in a 1950s manner, to be productive members of society. And this will become more important, of course, as we, at least within the county and in the state, move into the next 15 years, because we're already in a position of labor shortage here as well as everywhere else in the state. So we need all hands on deck, and if we know that there are people on the sidelines, we need to work better to identify who those people are and encourage them to, lend a hand. So when we look at what's going on in the state, the legislature is currently working its way through the 2017-2019 biennial budget. The most critical issues facing them, of course, is the State of the Road Building Trust Fund. There have been a number of proposals that have been levied. Again, depending on the time of day, depending on the week, there have been proposals in the Assembly to either increase the gas tax, which the governor has signaled strong opposition to, pull money from the general fund, so general tax revenue, to obligate the trust fund, which the governor has also signaled resistance to. There have been some studies regarding the potential for the imposition of, or the adoption of tollways in southeast Wisconsin, which the governor is also resistant to. So in general, the situation that we have right now, at least on the road side, is growing costs with very little prospect for additional revenue to pay for those costs. I'll be very curious to see what happens, just like everybody else. We know that the budget, at least, again, is coming due and will be passed well before its effective date of July 1st. Medicaid and other healthcare related spending within that budget now constitutes 42% of all expenditures. So as those healthcare bills continue to increase, they're squeezing out other aspects of state funding. There's also a very strong push or renewed focus, at least by the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, as well as Progress Lakeshore and other organizations focused on innovation. Innovation within the context of how it happens in Wisconsin historically has not been followed the Silicon Valley story. The university system, as it's very strongly advocated over the course of the last 6 months, plays a prominent role in that conversation. But the tale of innovation as it relates to a lot of the state is seen reflected in the faces here today. We are really a small business economy. And so as a consequence, the next big idea may not necessarily be the sexy idea, but it's the one that creates the most jobs and generates the most revenue. Now, it's no secret that we, again, looking around the room, are an aging population. I can say the same. I turned 40 in August. Every time I go home, which is a relatively short drive for me now, it's about 10 minutes, my stepmother asks me when she will be meeting her next grandchild, and I keep telling her I'm working on that. But so as a consequence, the conversation, at least within Wisconsin, has torn towards this issue of population attraction. So there are about 25 open positions, currently open job positions in Northeast Wisconsin. There are about 92,000 open job positions in the state. There are about 630 open positions as of today in Manitowoc County. We need people to fill those positions. By and large, where we plan on finding those people are from pulling them from other states, which presents an interesting dilemma because every other state is trying to do the same thing. So as a consequence, for example, Indiana yesterday hosted their 6th annual Talent Attraction Forum. They've been doing this for 6 years, where they basically go across, bring out the welcome wagon, go into Southeast Michigan, and tout the benefits of living in Indiana. We could do the same thing here. The question really again is who's going to do it and how are they going to do it? Because again, talent within the context of the economy is really a zero-sum game at present. So one of the other things that we're looking at very closely, and this relates to talent and it relates to the employment population ratio and it relates to everything else, is productivity. Because of course, one of the things we know is that as a population, if we're not growing, and again, historically, Manitowoc County has grown by about 1.1% over the last 40 years. We know that we're a stagnant county with a relatively aging population. So if our businesses are going to continue to be productive, in essence, we need, or to be profitable, we need all the workers employed by those companies to be as productive as possible. And so, again, these are national figures, but as you can see, in 2014, manufacturing productivity in the U.S. peaked. And it's been decreasing relatively slowly ever since. And what that seems to indicate is that we've basically milked the last drop of productivity out of most of the workers that are employed in our plants. So what's the alternative? Well, we could hire more people, we could buy more robots, we could do a combination of the two things, both of which have consequences. But productivity, as the workforce continues to age, is going to be an increasing concern. And it's one that, again, a lot of companies understand at a basic level, but have more difficulty translating into the actual impact that each individual worker provides to the company's bottom line. So when we look at the local population, and this is where I'm going to disagree with Peter a little bit. So we know that the county's population has grown by about 1.1%, and I see Greg Buckley staring at me, so I'm not going to talk about what's happened in Two Rivers. So for those of you who are curious, the population of Two Rivers has decreased by 16% over that same period. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I grew up in Two Rivers, graduated from Two Rivers, and when I graduated from high school, 2 months later I left. And I've come back to the area, but now I live on the north side of Manitowoc. So we have an aging population. But what that aging population brings to the market is a lot of disposable income. We are seeing two real trends in the real estate market. Dean Halverson pointed to one of those, which is southern Manitowoc County has become a market for workforce housing for Sheboygan. Similarly, many of our communities have also become attractive retirement markets, particularly for those in the Milwaukee suburbs. So what we have is a situation where, at least in terms of residential real estate, you know, a lot of purchases by largely absentee property owners, but they bring a lot of disposable income to the market, and they demand certain things in terms of retail mix, hospitality, restaurants, and what have you. So it's a great thing for business development, but what it calls to mind, again, is the potential for generational tension. Because the types of things that I, as a 4-year-old, want in a marketplace may not be the same things as what my father wants, as he's turning 70 this July. And so consequently, as we start to think about a long-term vision for Manitowoc County, we might be tempted to pursue those opportunities which have really a shorter-term return, but may not necessarily be long-term sustainable because of those changing tastes. Similarly, we know that, again, with a shrinking labor force, wages have started to increase again. New hire wages in the region, for example, last year grew by about 6.5%. So companies are finding that they have to pay more for talent. But what they're also finding is that compensation alone is probably not the deciding factor that most young workers take into consideration when they're looking for their next place to work. What a lot of young workers are looking for now is really, again, a whole host of secondary fringe benefits, a friendly workplace culture, as well as a defined plan for their advancement. So when I, as a young worker, make a commitment to your company, I want to know where I will be 5 years from now, not necessarily what I will be doing 6 months from now when I pass probation. And that again presents a different challenge to companies who haven't necessarily had to think that way. So when we look at the population of Manitowoc County, as I said, it's increased by 1.1%. It's also been aging to some extent, although not to the extent that Peter will suggest. The median age in Manitowoc County of the population is 44.2 years, not 46, but it's close enough, you know. And it's 44.2 years for those of us who choose to count our lifespan in terms of 36-day increments. You know, that 0.2, sorry, this is a joke. It's a little too early in the morning for that. But that is, so our median age here is about 4 years older than the state median, and it's about 8 years older than the national. So we're older than the state, we're older than the nation, but we're also a population that will be relatively stable within that median age, such that 10 years from now, the median age of the population might be 46. But it's still a population which skews old and is not getting any younger, largely, again, because of the fact that, well, I'm perfect evidence of this. I don't plan on having as many kids as my dad did, and my dad didn't have as many children as his parents did, and so on and so forth. Birth rates in Manitowoc County have been gradually declining since 1974, so it's not all my fault. But what this breeds is questions about succession. So when you look at 2017, one of the defining trends is not necessarily how do we survive, it's more of a question of what comes next. We are, again, as is evidenced in this room, a region which is defined by small businesses. We are also a region which is defined very heavily by family-owned businesses. And so consequently, as we see those older owners start to consider their exit strategy, they will be looking for new talent, new blood, and a succeeding owner that might take that business to the next level. Similarly, as companies start to see some of their more highly valued talent start to walk out the door, they will also be forced to think very strategically about what comes next. And as again, there are a number of bankers in the room. I'll leave with the last slide, which shows you exactly how healthy the region is, or how healthy the lending environment is. And that's commercial lending activity nationally among the 100 largest banks. Commercial lending volume in the United States is at a historical high level. So for those of you who are complaining that there's no money in the market, there's a lot of money in the market. There's also a lot of opportunity, and again, as someone who's committed to the region, and I'm committed, by virtue of nothing else other than the fact that in 6 weeks I'll be marrying a local girl who's a proud 6th grade science teacher at St. Francis Middle School. That, again, the community of Manitowoc and Manitowoc County is a place that I'm very heavily invested in for the next 40 years. And I think that, again, as long as we have the commitment that the region will continue to be kind of the shining light on the Lakeshore, there's no reason it shouldn't be. So Peter is in the back of the room, and I'm just wrapping up my comments, but I think Dean's next on the agenda. So I will thank you and enjoy the rest of the program.